TM, by the way. That's going to be the name of a book that I write someday.
That's
But this
your
is
hashtag.
really about
That's your great hashtag.
Midlife Renaissance. It's not for me, for someone like me, a surfer like me, it's not about performance or catching the most waves. If I can get up and have enough time to remember a little bit of style and, ride it as long as I can, then I'm just thrilled.
And then I have to also turn this around because, I have you to thank for the fact that I really got into this again because, I did start in my 20s and there was something I couldn't quite access. And it was when I came out with you and other women and we had this community and, the phone calls, are you going? Okay, we're going tomorrow. It's just that thing. And then also kind of like going with people that are your level and then also people who are better than you. And then so is, when you're surfing with people your level, I feel like it's really good because it's just, and also I came at it the second time around with zero expectations, knowing what a hard time I had the first time. So I just, I'm just going to like go fuck around in the water and whatever, hang out with my friends is literally how I
stakes are very low when you're surfing with Jungwon.
No, it wasn't just you. It was just the second time around. Well, I should preface it by saying in my 20s, it was the time when like everyone was like, it's all about a shortboard. And, I was going out with my brother and, if you want to learn how to surf, you got to learn surf on a shortboard. And, if you want to ride a shortboard, you got to learn on a short, it was just like, there's no other board. I don't think I even saw a longboard. And it's, it was really hard. And I was, at the prime of my athleticism. And I thought, I should be able to basically basically beat the ocean in whatever condition. As an athlete, knowing nothing about the ocean. And I think that's why surfing is so different than any other sport, because you've got this huge thing called the ocean that is changing constantly, not knowing the difference between like when we went on a family vacation, like to Puerto Rico, and then like, surfing those waves or being in the water in those waves. I wouldn't even call what I did surfing, but and then coming to New York and trying to, and at that time also the way information came to you as far as like forecast and how to surf and how to, like what kind of boards, just all the nuts and bolts of it. And I thought I should be able to beat it. Like if I couldn't surf, it was on me. I wasn't athletic enough. I wasn't able to kind of like conquer it. And then the second time around, it was just about fun, no expectation. I had a longboard. That's how I started.
No, you had a shortboard first.
Yeah,
I was with you.
A shortboard.
I remember you bought the shortboard.
Yeah. So
and
stupid.
we went out a few times, and I remember, you were doing your thing, but it was, it was just extra hard. And then
I got that.
I think you traded it in and you got the Walden Magic. Yes.
Oh my God, that was life changing because it was like the learning
caught every wave.
Was
you
just,
caught every wave.
And I finally got it. And there
were mad guys in the lineup giving you side eye all the time. They're like, "Oh, that chick again."
No, but it was, it gave me enough time to kind of like figure things out. Like the longboard allowed me to be in the ocean and kind of see all the patterns. And then at that time, having this kind of community of friends that were at different levels. I had some friends, women, all women, some were, had more experience and some less, but being able to trade information. And I think that's why I think, this new kind of renaissance of surfing, broadening kind of its community is really interesting because I find that surfing is really something that requires community, a passing of information. It's really hard to kind of just like do it and just get it. I mean, if you're a kid, that's one thing. If you have a lot of time to do it, that's another. It's going to take a minute. But I think now with all the information that's available, the community that I have now, and just a different approach to the sport. Like back then it was like so bro. And the other reason why I didn't feel comfortable, riding anything but a shortboard was because I was the only woman out there. I didn't want to look like, especially as an athlete, less than, like that I couldn't keep up with the boys, you know? And so and not knowing anything about it, I couldn't do it. So like thanks to you, and then all the women that, you know, we just kind of connected together with, it was, you know, it changed everything. And so,
yeah, I think it's important to remember that even 10 years ago, when you and I first started surfing in Rockaway, there actually were not very many women out there.
right. Mm-hmm.
And we would only see women really in the summer,
Mm-hmm.
in the later months of summer. But
Right.
I remember when we used to go on those crazy snowy expeditions in the winter,
Mm-hmm.
and there weren't a lot of women out there. Now I think it's, you know,
Yeah.
the landscape has totally changed, and you see a lot of women surfers. You see a lot more people of color.
Yeah.
You see, and a lot of, you know, more mature,
Mm-hmm.
seasoned surfers, certain
Mm-hmm.
age,
And then also
as
the
well.
culture of this kind of like mature, or just women in general, longboarders, or any kind of surfer across the country, and the really cool community-based groups. Like I know there's so many Facebook pages that I belong to, whether it's the New York Surf Chicas or the one in LA. And, you know, there are like different communities that, you know, that have those pages, and thus the conversations and the socials, and, you know, it really is this beautiful community building thing, and, you know, a source of women's empowerment. So Jungwon, I wanted to kind of talk about, you know, your work right now, because I know you're at the Rainforest Alliance, and last week you had a fundraiser.
Yeah, I mean, you know, at first glance, rainforest conservation and the work that the Rainforest Alliance does might not appear to be directly related to oceans, but in fact, what we do is really very, very much related to ocean health and the health of the ocean ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
The Rainforest Alliance basically focuses on really pragmatic solutions to deforestation
Mm-hmm.
and I guess what we would call the sort of environmental and human costs of extractive and exploitive supply chains. So we work directly with companies that want to source materials much more responsibly. And we work with indigenous forest communities, as well as farming communities, mainly in the tropics. You know, we have a lot of work in Latin America, Central and Mesoamerica, West Africa, East Africa, and Southeast Asia, specifically Indonesia.
Mm-hmm.
And we are really in the business of what has become known as natural climate solutions.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing I really want to say to everybody who cares about conservation and people who care about communities and community health, human rights, and all of the things that touch climate.
Mm-hmm.
Natural climate solutions, which would include things like forest conservation, rainforest conservation, the conservation of mangroves and wetlands, and sustainable and regenerative agriculture, as well as things like the cultivation of seagrass and kelp farms and those types of things.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all under the umbrella of natural climate solutions. And natural climate solutions have the potential to help the entire world reach 37% of its carbon emissions reductions under the Paris Agreement. So basically, they represent more than a third of the global climate solution.
Wow.
But right now, natural climate solutions only receive about 3% of international climate financing. So I'm just saying that to kind of plant this idea in people's minds. And, you know, and I'm just going to keep saying it to people until it becomes mainstream knowledge. We must stop our fossil fuel dependence and our fossil fuel economy. For sure, we absolutely have to transform our economy away from fossil fuels. And in addition to that, in order to repair and reduce the emissions that we've already spent that have brought us to the very brink of a climate catastrophe, we really only have, I think, 10 years or less to achieve a really huge reduction in emissions. In order to do that, we really, really, really have to support natural climate solutions. We have to stop, not reduce, not slow. We have to stop tropical deforestation altogether. And we also have to change our entire relationship to land and the way that we grow food.
Right.
So sustainable agriculture, a lot of people don't know this, but sustainable agriculture also has the potential to store a lot of carbon, to absorb it out of the atmosphere and to store it in the soil. And if sustainable agriculture is practiced very well and thoroughly, what should happen and what does happen after 3 to 4 years of implementing sustainable farming methods, the land, that your cropland will begin to increase its yield. So your harvest will increase. And for farmers living in developing countries where, income, a small change in income really makes a huge difference, like school fees to send your kids to school, for example. Increasing your crop yield is a really important thing, not only because it helps their livelihoods, but it also prevents further encroachment into forests. So one of the biggest reasons in the tropics for deforestation is to expand the land area where people can grow crops. And typically this is done mostly by large agribusinesses and cattle ranchers who want to grow livestock. But it is also something that happens at the hands of small farmers who really can't be faulted for wanting to just make a little bit more money to be able to make a, sort of decent living. So we recently had our annual fundraising gala. We actually did an online program this year instead of an in-person event. And you can watch, it's a half an hour program. And then we have 2 amazing DJ sets afterward by DJ Rashida and also by Natasha Diggs. So if you just go to the Rainforest Alliance YouTube channel, you'll see it there. It's probably at the top of the page. And
you can support their efforts as well.
Yes, you can support our efforts. Just go to the Rainforest Alliance rainforestalliance.org website, and you can learn more about our work. But the connection to oceans, I'm going to get there, is this. So sustainable agriculture, one of the most important aspects of sustainable agriculture is the reduction of chemical fertilizers, and also very strict requirements on wastewater management. So sustainable agriculture is really preoccupied with soil health, composting organic material, for example, putting mulch down, pruning, manually weeding instead of using herbicides and weedicides. And those are things that make a huge impact on oceans because, as we know, all water flows eventually to the ocean. Right. So in Costa Rica, for example, we went to go visit a banana farm, and we saw that it was a Rainforest Alliance banana farm, certified banana farm. And the farm managers had planted all kinds of water filtering plants in their irrigation canals. They took incredible care of the topsoil. They had a huge vermiculture, sort of worm composting warehouse where they created their own rich compost all of the time. And we went to the creek where they do water monitoring samples all the time. They take samples all the time for monitoring. And we saw lots of fish. We saw the quality of the water improving. We followed the creek to the river, and then we followed the river all the way down to the ocean, which is right near Punta Uva and Manzanillo Beach. People who are familiar with the Caribbean coast of Costa Rica will know this area. And we spoke to a restaurant owner down there, Andy, I think his name is, and he has this amazing